Just to give you the context, Paul is teaching the Corinthian church about God's faithfulness, okay? And he's using the Old Testament. And he says, all were baptized into Moses in the cloud of the sea. He's looking back on the Exodus. He says they all ate the same spiritual food. They all drank the same spiritual drink. They drank that spiritual rock that followed them. And the rock was Christ, it says. But with most of them, God was not well pleased, for their bodies were scattered in the wilderness. And he says here in verse 6, now all these things became our example, to the intent that we should not lust after evil things as they lusted, and do not become idolaters as some of them were. As it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play, nor let us commit sexual immorality as some of them did. And in one day 23,000 of them fell. Nor let us tempt Christ as some of them also tempted, and they were destroyed by serpents. Nor complain as some of those complained, and they were destroyed by the destroyer. Now all these things happened to them as examples, and they were written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the ages have come. Now therefore anyone who thinks he stands, take heed lest he fall. You see, when Paul was teaching the Corinthian church, he was teaching New Testament believers. He said, you go back and you study the scriptures. You go look at those things that happened in the wilderness. You go look at Israel. Why? These were Gentiles. These were people that were not Israel. And Paul says, you go look at them. Why? Because they were given as examples so you don't fall into the same thing. You go look at their lives and how when God was faithful to them over and over and over again, they kept falling into idolatry, so you don't do the same thing. Don't follow their path. What is wisdom? I've always heard a great definition of wisdom. There's two definitions. You have experience and wisdom. Experience is you failing and falling into it and then learning from it and hopefully growing from it. Wisdom is looking at others who have fallen and then you not falling and seeing their example and doing it right the first time. That's wisdom. Wisdom is to be able to look at the example of other people and say, well, they screwed up doing that. I'm not going to fall into that. And that's what Paul said. You guys, go back to the Old Testament. Look at Israel. Learn about God through there and don't fall into the same mistakes they did. God was faithful to them, and they fell into idolatry. God was faithful to them, and He fed them, and they still searched after other gods, and they fell into sexual immorality and all these things. Don't do that. He said, go back and look at the Old Testament, because all those things were not only pointing to Christ, but they were an example so that you wouldn't screw up in the same areas. So that you wouldn't mess up. That when you see God's faithfulness, you turn to Him in love. You don't have a hard heart like they had. You don't have a stiff neck as they had, is what it says. That you refuse to set your ego aside and humble yourself. No, you see God's love and you be thankful for it and you do the right thing. Look at their example and make the right decision.